It's a shame that some of the most influential and groundbreaking stories of Doctor Who have been underestimated. Today we're looking at
The Black Orchid. The opening of this tale is resounding Agatha Christie, orientated at least. The strangle of the servant is only pinched by the image of Anne Harrison tossing and turning in her bed, who we'll call Anne Cran. The rail services became used on a more regular, now opening with distinct horror vibes. This is highlighted by the landing of the TARDIS and the Pete Doc's, call him the Pete Doc, the Pete Doc's professing of his love of railway stuff. Shots of the darkly lit manor pile of Cranley Hall revel the mysteries that have forever surrounded the genre. It all dwells as a sort of gothic vibe. Shadows will resonate throughout the story to come. Now, it is evident that director Ron Jones decided to take the approach of the story on a more factual note. The writer, Terence Dudley, very much plumbed for a more fictional vocation. His usage of the trope that leisure had moved from the cities to the villages and the country is very much there. These facts are very much reflected in the pronouncement from Peter Davison and the rest of the cast in various DVD and Blu-ray commentaries. The vibe of the saga is suddenly shifting gears, and we're given to understand that the Pete Doc's companion, Nyssa, is an identical twin of their prospective hosts proposed.
I'm Brian of Nazareth! I'm Brian! I'm Brian! I'm Brian!
We'll call this Nistar and obviously Anne Cran to avoid confusion. It's a side note that the trope of the identical protagonists is a large Agatha Christie literary tool seen in many of her stories. Introductions all round go to underline the polite sosh. Pete Doc seems quite bemused though. He is mistaken for a friend of the family, Smutty Thomas. The awkwardness of the situation in which the crew find themselves wraps around the dialogue here as there is nothing left for Pete Doc to do but throw himself into the situ. It's a play to Michael Cochrane's well-portrayed role here, although the autumn filming didn't do much to promote the image that was being plumped for a summer's afternoon in the Roaring Twenties. The detractors of the Pete Doc's run may say that the ineptitude he shows during the masterpiece of the game is indicative of his tenure.
It's sometimes difficult just to shrug these things off, sir.
The banter between the companions and Lady Cranley, introducing Sir Robert Moore, who turns out to be the chief constable, smacks of astonishment as confusion flourishes upon seeing the resemblance between Nistar and Anne Cran. Snobbery and class structure rear their fascinating heads. Even Agatha herself, in the real world, encountered the sort of snobbery that allowed people to consider the right breeding too good to be a pharmacy nurse during World War I, for instance.
Women, know your limits.
That the crew had got themselves invited back to the manor pile to indulge in some more cucumber sandwiches and the imminent fancy dress party. Having a toilet in your bath while sipping a drink, all very PG wotas.
Were it not for the juice of the grape and the grain, weddings would be a thing of the past.
Now, cutting to a short sequence as we gaze on the mystery chap at the beginning. He is tied up in his bed in flannels and a tank top, as you do. Another allusion to the Agatha Croak of a meeting between Anne Cran and Nistar.
Oh my God.
As Tegan asserts the establishment of the key part of the tale, the Black Orchid. A further plot point is established here when we learn that Ancran was engaged to the explorer before his brother. It's of note that Michael Cochrane appears yet again as an explorer in the 1987 story Ghostlight, this time brotherless. Terence Dudley and Eric Saywood manage, as writer and script editor, to pronounce such attributes quite abundantly here, and it resonates throughout the script. Ancran suggests the wheeze that both her and Nistar wear the same costume to the ball. The mystery flannel chap comes in through a secret passage and steals Pete Doc's cozzy. Pete Doc, meanwhile, finding himself, through his own curiosity, stuck in the covert passages. Now it's not hard to believe that the manor pile holds pre-sold. It is also established that the tortured flannel chap has disappeared. The tortured guy, who we assume is George C., has hightailed it down to the party and starts to jig with who we are to assume is Ancran. But it's upon striking up yet another Christie trope that we see the Pete Doc opening various cupboard doors in the corridors, out of which falls yet another dead servant. The intruder, George C., meanwhile, has taken Ancran out of the terrace area while dancing, so he kills yet another servant while resisting attempts to allow Ancran to go. The outlook of our main protagonist is a reflection of the outlook of the times. Lady C is highly vocal in expressing her own perspective when she bumps into the Pete Doc after he finds the dead body of the servant Digby.
Oh, I say. That sounds like a motive for murder if ever I heard one.
And the tension mounts. Ancran is being invaded by the deformed stranger, and we were all amazed.
I say.
Until such time as the Pete Doc stumbles down the main flight of stairs into the main hall to be confronted by Lord C upon the discovery of the murder. It leans once again into old detective stereotype, introducing the unknown into the narratives, and other such Christie links. The jollity with which we reveal this revelation only gets highlighted upon the reference to time travel fiction in the form of H.G. Wells. Although the Doctor met H.G. Wells, his continued pleas to Lady C still met with silence, despite the declaration of the existence of another dead body that is yet to be found. The Pete Doc and company, Lady C, and Sir Robert enter the secret corridors in which the servant body can be found. Of course, it's been moved.
That's it, I'm off. That's it.
Before it can be discovered, and Pete Doc's proof of innocence dissolves. Lady C's obstinacy in digging her own heels in and protecting her secret is again pushed here as to refute any knowledge of what the Pete Doc is talking about. Now, Terence Dudley's ingenuity here of being able to lighten the situ, aside from its darkness, is very commendable. Alternatively, perhaps it is Davison's ability to lighten the heart of this Doc with the delivery of subtle one-liners. Pete Doc asserts the fact that with a delivery so desperate and exhausting, it's considerably impactful, stating, "Where the nuts come from." Lord C takes a phone call discovering that the Pete Doc is not a boy of the old school tie sent to fill in for the cricket match by his boarding school pal, but in fact an imposter. Now, only in the following scenes do we get yet another taster of the satire inherent of the following Christie dynamic, as there is, finally, a wrap-up during a drawing room scene, and we all breathe a sigh of relief. This is the string which the Pete Doc formed in the previous story, that of a silent sort who only speaks up when he can contribute assertively rather than the brash, overpowering characteristics of his previous. When tasked with the fact that his motives for the crime might come out in the inquiry, his retort of the
I sincerely hope so.
perhaps this is the shadow of writings like An Inspector Calls, or perhaps it takes its tones from Three Little Pigs, a drawing room full of potentials, but all of them refuting their accusers. Being cast as accomplices, the Pete Doc and companions are shifted to the police station by means of automobile. They might show the aggressors the TARDIS in an attempt to stymie their plans and move and prove their troth. The Bermuda Constable is only left to top the wonderment of said chappie when he enters the machine and declares, "Strike me pink!" that Forms George has not only killed his Brazilian manservant, Detoni, but also started a fire that would engulf the top part of the manor. The audience is left with a large disconnect as to what is going on here. The TARDIS materializes outside, and concerned that Form George will discover that he has the wrong actress, the Pete Dog has to find another more convoluted way up the stairs. Wrap-up commences within the story, not in the drawing room, but on the rooftop. Given at this point that the whole story could quite reasonably have been turned into a four-parter to expand the plot, perhaps in the vein of a flashback sequence in the episode. A little more vague exposition is delivered here by Lady C about the terrible trials that Formed George underwent in Brazil. To little explanation, too late, unfortunately. He seems to give up the ghost as his brother draws towards him in reconciliation. We are, however, to feel some sympathy for Lord C as he watches his brother fall to his untimely death. In a hurried climax to the story, Form George gets a good send-off as his character is given a moment of redemption. Not sure that the moment wasn't quite explored, though. Pete Stock receives a copy of the diaries of George Cranley, titled The Black Orchid. One final salute to Agatha that seals the deal in the most unsatisfying way possible in relation to her novel After the Funeral. Perhaps the poorly wrapped up script wasn't all Terence Dudley's fault. The season was grappling with both a tight budget and time constraints. It is only the next week that the audience is given a recompense in the form of Earthshock by Eric Saywood. Give us a good clicking, guys.
Sacanaka.